sugar and be like, I don't know, do you need trucks? And they work out these elaborate barters.
One thing I'd like to point out is that the collapse that's happening now is extremely different than any collapses that have occurred because of financial purposes.
Yeah.
This is a resource collapse, coupled with a debt collapse, coupled with a pollution acceleration, coupled with a destabilization of the atmosphere and the climate. This is a amalgam of problems, both man-made in a sense of abstraction, like the monetary system, and what we've created as a result, the consequence of what we've been doing for so long. So even if the soldiers are paid, they're going to come home to ravages. They're going to come home to lack of energy. They're going to come home to a depletion of food in many cases. So it's not going to work even if they keep printing more and more money. You know what I mean? So this is the big difference between what happened in the Great Depression. Great Depression, you know, there was plenty of resources. The fall of Argentina, and which was a credit expansion collapse. This is a completely new paradigm that we're entering into right now. So it's important to make that point.
And I mean, Zimbabwe or something. Like if your soldier's going home and he's being paid with $1 trillion bill,
it's a marvel.
It may you know, break morale a little bit.
It's a marvel that it could even make it to $1 trillion bill in my mind. You know, someone's actually rationalized. No, we need $1 trillion bill. All right, let's do that one. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, what the hell?
Just goes to show how arbitrary it is.
It is, but the fact that they would even get that far blows my mind.
Well, they won't let go. There's ego for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like...
Does the movement have any presence at all in East Asia or in China specifically?
China, no. Not that I know of.
That.
You know, China, there are a few people, I've got a few emails from China. They've snuck through their internet system, evidently, and as far as I know, there was a few people that were trying to do something, but there's no official chapter. And, you know, there are other Asian countries that we have a presence in. You can go to... I think we have an Indonesian chapter, a very small one. We have Singapore, yeah.
Singapore's huge. It's one of your...
we have to start somewhere.
Singapore's an ideal city, actually, to have a...
The major landmasses we don't have any real presence in is Russia. We have a Russian chapter, but it's not very active as of last I checked. And Russia's gigantic.
Right.
And in Africa, we have a South African chapter now, but again, it's a very small group, as you might imagine. And I guess that's dominant. Those are the two dominant land masses. If you look at the maps of our chapters and the maps of Z-Day or the maps of this film.
Antarctica.
What's that?
As a continent, there's nothing on Antarctica.
That's true. They don't have to worry about that too much. The Eskimos, I don't think, need a resource-based economy. Are Eskimos in Antarctica?
No, they're
that's
not. Greenland
just
and
science.
North
a
America.
projection. I don't know anything about Antarctica.
I have something that I can say about the nature of the collapse and the transition. I think a lot of people have this notion that we're waiting to see this massive earthquake when suddenly everything stops. And overnight everything is a disaster. I don't think we're ever really going to see that. Like you guys have been saying, I agree that we've been living in the collapse for the last 40 years. How many people are dying every day? How many homeless do we have? The transition is going to be the same thing. I don't think overnight we're going to suddenly have Fresco cities all over the world. It's a sliding scale. And in order for that sliding scale to start sliding back up towards positive transition, we're going to need more and more people to wake up and realize that they have a choice, they can participate. Voltaire said that man is free the moment he chooses to be. So it's really up to us. I mean, the Venus Project has been around for how long? And the Zeitgeist movement has only been around for a few years, and we already have about 500,000 members or more.
It's been 2 years.
2 years, so that's a really short amount of time. Imagine what we could accomplish in another 2 years if that number doubled or tripled, and that's the point. That's how things are going to work if we have that critical mass.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And the Venus Project was 2 before that.
Right.
Was what?
Was 2 before that.
Oh, right.
Zeitgeist movement.
Yeah.
But what are you not concerned about from the perspective of hard science? You know, we really are looking at a lot of solar activity. There is a lot of solar activity happening. The sun is emerging from an 11-year sleep cycle.
Okay.
There will be.
It does that every 11 years, though.
It does it every 11 years, and we are looking at a potential
fries satellites every 11 years too.
solar storm that could wipe out the grid.
Well, that's a whole new level of concern.
Technology.
I mean, these are my
Technology has
concerns. I think this is. This is
I'm
what
not
we write
as
about.
familiar with that. Sure. Well, you know what? This is all, as Jacque poetically stated, that I always stay with me. The only problems that exist are the problems that affect the whole of humanity, in the sense of human problems. And if, we have no approaches holistically as a globe to resolve any global problems. I mean, that's a problem in and of itself that generates the need for a global system of some kind.
Right. So my
From that
question was,
angle,
would that not be almost, I don't know, a nice segue into a future Fresco city, like for something like that to happen,
Well,
would that be?
I guess necessity creates action sometimes.
Sure.
Is maybe simple.
I'm not quite understanding your point, though. What would?
If the grid went out.
If the grid went
Oh,
out.
right.
This has been happening, this
I
isn't a
see.
new thing, and it's not a hypothetical thing. It happens every cycle, like
Every cycle.
satellites get,
Interesting.
Don't think
along,
that
along
cycle is
the
particularly
Carrington event
more
was,
intense.
Is it?
the Carrington event was the
Another
most famous incident, and it lit telegraph machines on fire.
Wow.
I mean, it happens.
And
It
we have a lot
happens
more.
pretty
We have a
often.
lot more for it to.
And now we have more and more
we have
satellites,
more
blah,
for
blah,
it to
blah.
sort of, fry.
Right.
It's going to be an
They're
interesting
in the process
future.
of doing
It's gonna be very
backups.
interesting,
There are
sure.
backups.
Well, they're
that will
trying,
be
but so,
put in there.
if
And
the-
that
if
might
it's
be an
something that's
excuse
out of our hands,
to
Mr.
shut down the activity, because then only the essential commerce will be allowed.
There
So
we
I
go.
can see it being contrived and
Well,
and screwed around.
all problems are used by the political establishment.
Exactly.
Never
And
waste a
it's-
crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the first thing that all politicians, even news media, when they see any event, whether it's just for their self-interest on a shallow level, or or for something that they want to promote in
Rating
their own
levels.
extreme, anything that happens, they try to orient it for their self-interest in whatever way they can. So that's to be expected. It's an important point for people to remember, especially every time we see any type of catastrophe. I won't even go into what's inspired the wars that we've seen and all of the press issues that come out with different individuals. Anyway, that's for another conversation. But
I think about the question about whether or not the grid collapsing would help move us towards a Fresco city. It could or it couldn't. A collapse might speed that up, but it also might make it
might
far
not.
more difficult now
Sure.
because we
It's
can't
hard to
use
call these
technology
things. Yeah.
That's a good
to
point.
communicate. If the grid collapsed, how are people going to use the internet to communicate,
Well,
which is
yeah.
one of our greatest assets right now, especially as a movement.
Well, I don't think the grid would collapse forever. I mean, it would be a collapse of, I don't know, probably
I
what,
think
3-4
I think
weeks?
what's
Something like that, but what would happen in those 3 or 4 weeks?
Sure.
Well,
What do we really?
Sure.
That's hard to
Anything
predict.
can happen. I
That's
think
hard to predict. Like,
Extremely hard to
if you had
predict.
so we had an East Coast blackout a handful of years ago, right?
Yeah.
But it only lasted a day or two, so it was beautiful.
Yeah, it was
For the
great.
most part, in
It
New
was
York
like
City,
New
it
York
was
City was
considered
dark.
it was like a holiday. It was beautiful.
Mhm.
Everyone treated each other. I mean, it was really an indication of what humans would like to be with each other, rather than like what the system tells them to be.
Right.
Right.
Mm.
For that night, everybody was gorgeous.
Yeah,
to
it was
each
the
other.
highlight of my,
it was,
entire 15 years.
ask anybody that was here in 2003 about their blackout experience,
The
and
best.
some people had bad
There was so
moments.
much, there was a lot of love going on.
But there was a lot
Right,
of
I
love
remember.
going on.
Love you,
And that was
That
that
was-
was the overall instinct for most people.
Sure.
And so now, if the blackout had lasted 2 weeks,
What are we looking at?
when
No
everybody's
water,
blood
no
sugar starts
fuel.
to kick in, like on the 5th day,
And food becomes
yeah,
scarce.
and they
and
run out of
water
food, and
scarce,
suddenly
and-
people start to remember that they are armed actually, and that,
Sure.
So these aren't predictable things.
They're not.
Mhm.
But they know something isn't. They know something is not right. They do.
I hope so.
Well, obviously they do. I mean, yes.
They do. I mean, which is why they spend all this money, like, putting out calling 311 and saying, pack your go bags,
Sure,
get ready. This
sure.
has got nothing to do with 9/11.
Right.
They don't give a shit. They really don't. Like,
Right.
they know that something else may happen.
Right, right.
What that something else is, I don't know. I'm not clear on
You
that.
know what Mark Twain said? That the earth is the insane asylum of the universe.
That's great.
And so whether people do the right thing, they want change in you, not themselves. They want to change other people to see things their way.
Sure.
As long as U.S. thinks that way, Britain and France and Germany, you're going to have problems. If we get to more people in less time, and the people act, talk to other people, and we build a large enough following, we can influence the future. If we fail to do that, whatever happens will happen. That's the way I see it.
Can you draw a distinction between when we're talking about global solutions, right? There's one set of people, I think, at a more citizen level who agree and who think that, like, we're all in this together. We have to think about it this way. We have to find mutual solutions. It's a very mutual aid kind of mindset.
Sure.
So how do you talk to the people who talk about black helicopters and one world government and all of that set
Alan
of
Fear,
fears
conspiracy.
about
Yeah. There's
you
been a-
can't let there be a global system because, according to this
The level...
fear set.
The level of I can't think of a word to describe the ignorance and mind lock and religious faith
It is very
and
religious.
fear that people have of the world trying to work together. And that somehow you're going to end up with a grand world dictator that has everyone on leather leashes.
That's the Pope.
and it blows my mind. I get emails about this all the time, and if anyone's familiar with the feedback of Zeitgeist Addendum, there have been media critics that have brought this up as though we're advocating some kind of new tyrannical one-world government. You might remember in the early editions of Zeitgeist the movie, I talk about how the banking system had been planning on making a unified banking orientation, which is essentially one world government, because government really is the movement of money. And they already have this.
Sure.
It's been around, and it's called the New World Order. But that label is contrived. The New World Order definition has changed throughout time. It was first introduced by H.G. Wells in his book, The New World Order, which was actually a positive book that was completely misinterpreted by people that thought he was talking about eugenics and controlling people and microchipping them and all of these things that were basically invented out of thin air with regards to what his intentions were. And then it got morphed, and then it got used by different famous personalities throughout time.
Trickle down.
And then now we have this psychotic, weird group of religious fanatics, not necessarily of a Christian or anything.
No,
They're religious in their blind view of this fear. And that's a big problem. I don't know what to say to people because you can't rationalize.
You can't rational because it's not a rational.
If anyone can't realize that the world is a singular system, and that people share all the resources, and it's completely interrelated synergistically, and that there are global problems as it is a singular system, if they can't realize that humanity has to work together, if one group has this, another group doesn't, then they're going to fight. That's just the way it's always been historically, and that's just the way we respond to scarcity and deprivation. If people can't get that under their belts, I don't know what to say. You just have to walk away when people bring that stuff up. But I've actually been called a one-worlder.
They're the greatest detractors, though, to the work that people are trying to do. It's actually really frustrating.
It is.
Yeah,
I understand the fear of power, because we have been abused by power for years. And I can understand that, but it doesn't reconcile the necessity to be organized. We have to get through this power neuroses, and the power neuroses is generated by the tradition of the system and the monetary
And the tradition of
self-interest.
the hierarchy, pyramid type structure versus
Where you
versus a collaborative.
Where you abuse everyone at the bottom.
non-hierarchical
Precisely, you abuse everyone at the bottom for the sake of the people at the top. Such as now today,
Oh, you mean
we
the
have.
Illuminati triangle?
Well, you want to call it that, but the triangle has been around for a long time in that sense. You have 1% of the population owning 40% of the planet's wealth, making all their money off of essentially the slavery of the entire.
Pick a pharaoh, pick a king, whatever.
It's exactly the same.
Exactly.
It's just a variation, a little bit better, and it's hidden in America. People
Subtly.
actually think they're free because they've been told they're free. They think they
I don't
have
think it's
democracy
in
because
America
they've
at all.
been
I
told.
think it's blatant.
Yeah, but people can choose to tell themselves whatever they want.
They can condition this. I'm sure there's
People,
people.
this is what I was saying
It's
to
Stockholm
you out in the
syndrome.
hallway. It's Stockholm
Exactly what
syndrome.
it is.
When somebody's been in a bad relationship for a long time, and they've been putting up with like awfulness from the other person for a long time, I bet they have a justification for it. by
Oh, they
now.
work- that's-
They've come up with a way to rationalize it to
Sure.
themselves and to their friends and whoever hears them talk about it.
Yeah. Well, you
Because
see that.
otherwise, why did you put up with all that, right?
Sure, sure.
And people do that with everything.
They do.
They do that with
And
their government. They
they
do that with
justify
their.
it.
They